To me, one of the most interesting teams for the 2025 college football season has to be the Michigan Wolverines. After winning a national championship in the 2023 season, the Wolverines fell off a bit in 2024, but still managed to have some crazy victories, including wins over Alabama and Ohio State. The Wolverines are looking to bounce back in a big way in 2025, and I think they have a legit chance at doing so. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Michigan Wolverines, preview their roster, go through how they did last year, talk about who they gained and who they lost, and I'm also going to give you a game-by-game prediction for them. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's go ahead and get started and talk about the Michigan Wolverines for 2025. So last year's team was definitely going to be interesting as they started out the year ranked number 9 in the country and defeated Fresno State at home in week 1. The game was not very close. In week 2, they had the matchup of the weekend as they played against number 3 Texas at home. This game definitely exposed the quarterback issues at Michigan, and they ended up losing 31-12. This was a big step back for them. In week 3, they would take care of Arkansas State at home before facing off with number 11 USC. This was one of the most exciting games of September as they had a long drive down the field and eventually scored a game-winning touchdown and knocked off the then number 11 Trojans, who ended up not being all that good. Honestly, both of these teams were inflated. After that, they returned home to play against Minnesota, and in the Little Brown Jug game, it was a blowout for a while, but then Minnesota made a furious comeback, and Michigan would end up winning by 3. The Wolverines were at this point 4-1 and still had playoff potential, but they'd have to get some stuff figured out quick. Unfortunately, things would blow up rather quickly as they travel on the road and lost by 10 points to Washington. This game also exposed them. Then after that, they lost 21-7 on the road against number 22 Illinois. All of a sudden, the Wolverines were 4-3, and the season was in serious danger. In the Paul Bunyan game against Michigan State, they'd bounce back and win by a touchdown, and then would face off with number 1 Oregon. This game wasn't close either, as the Ducks won 38-17, and Michigan really was reeling. Things would not get any easier the following week as they'd have to travel on the road to number 8 Indiana, who was the surprise team in the Big Ten in 2024, and while it was close at the end, this game epitomized their quarterback issues as they lost 20-15. But Michigan decided to flip some sort of switch after that Indiana game as they would then destroy Northwestern 50-6, and then for a 4th straight year would knock off Ohio State. Not only did they win this game against the Buckeyes, but they traveled into the shoe and did this, and they won 13-10 and shocked the entire college football world. This was so bad for Ohio State that many thought that Ryan Day was going to get fired, and eventually the Buckeyes won the national championship, but the fact that this Michigan team beat them is just insane to me. It ended up making a bowl game and would knock off number 11 Alabama 19-13, and Michigan had a weird season. They ended up beating 3 top 12 teams, but also had some serious weaknesses as well. The team went 8-5 with a 5-4 mark in the Big Ten, and the quarterback situation was a serious problem. The Wolverines would play 3 different guys at the position, with Davis Warren leading the way with 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns, Jack Tuttle had 300 yards and a touchdown, and Alex Orji had 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. In the running back department, Donovan Edwards was a preseason All-American, but he ended up sort of being a bust. Kalel Mullings would lead the way with 948 yards and 12 touchdowns, and then behind him, Donovan Edwards, Jordan Marshall, and quarterback Alex Orji also ended up being decent. In terms of the receiver game, tight end Colston Loveland became the main weapon as he caught 56 passes for 582 yards and 5 touchdowns. Behind him, you had Tyler Morris, Samaj Morgan, and Frederick Moore, and then Marlon Klein was also decent. As you can tell, the skill player positions were just not all that great for Michigan last year, and they didn't get great production, so that's something they're definitely going to have to work on. In terms of the defense, Ernest Hausman led the way with 89 total tackles, Josiah Stewart would lead the way with 8.5 sacks, Zeke Berry would have 9 pass deflections, and they had a 4-way tie for interceptions with Makari Page, Will Johnson, Zeke Berry, and Amir Hall. This Michigan team did have plenty of talent, as they ended up sending 7 guys off to the NFL. Mason Graham would go at pick number 5 to the Cleveland Browns, Colston Loveland would go at pick 10 to the Chicago Bears, and Kenneth Grant would go at pick 13 to the Miami Dolphins. They had 3 guys taken in the top 15, and Will Johnson could have easily been a first-round pick if not for the injury, but he'd go in the second round to the Cardinals. In the 3rd round, Josiah Stewart went to the Los Angeles Rams, Kalel Mullings went to the Titans in round 6, and Miles Hinton went to the Eagles in round 6. This ended up being a really solid draft class for the Wolverines, but they were definitely going to need to reload. Luckily, they had a really good recruiting class, as it ranked number 8 in the country and was obviously headlined by 5-star recruit Bryce Underwood. He was the number 1 player in the nation, and him flipping from LSU to Michigan was a huge deal. Guys like Andrew Babaloa, Ty Haywood, and Shamari Earls also were big names for them, and in the transfer portal, they did a little bit of work. It ranked number 31 in the country, and they got 16 guys overall. They got Jake Garcia, a guy who's been at pretty much every single school, John Volker, a running back from Princeton, CJ Hester, a running back from UMass, Lawrence Hatter, Caleb Anderson from Louisiana, Anthony Simpson from UMass, Trey Williams from Clemson, Justice Haynes from Alabama, TJ Metcalf from Arkansas, Mikey Keene from Fresno State, Troy Bowles from Georgia, Damon Payne from Alabama, Travis Metcalf from Arkansas, Brady Norton from Cal Poly, and Donovan McCauley from Indiana. Honestly, there are 3 guys who stick out to me, as Damon Payne was a former 5-star, and I think will be really good for them. Justice Haynes is probably going to be the starting running back for them, and Donovan McCauley should be their number 1 weapon in the receiver game. They definitely got a lot of underrated transfers that nobody's talking about, and their depth chart looks a lot different than it did last year. In terms of the quarterback spot, all eyes will be on true freshman Bryce Underwood, as he's probably going to be the starter for them and will have a lot of hype, sort of like Dylan Raiola did last year. Behind him, you'll have the depth piece in Mikey Keene, former blue chip recruit Jaden Davis, and then world traveler Jake Garcia. Davis Warren is also on the roster, but I'm pretty sure he is injured. Underwood is 100% going to be the guy. At the running back spot, they definitely have a couple of big names, but it'll be headlined by former blue chip recruit Jordan Marshall and then Alabama transfer Justice Haynes. Transfer John Volker should also see the field, and then guys like CJ Hester and Jasper Parker should also get an opportunity to get on the field for them. I really like Justice Haynes. At the wide receiver spot, they definitely will need to improve, as they do return Frederick Moore and Samaj Morgan, and then plug in Donovan McCauley from Indiana, who was super efficient back in 2023, but ended up getting hurt in 2024, and is now with the Wolverines. Behind him, you also have Channing Goodwin, Andrew Marsh, Anthony Simpson, and Kendrick Bell. Also, shout out to maizenbrew.com, as I definitely didn't want to lead you guys in the wrong direction, and they have some great depth chart information. At the tight end spot, to replace their top 10 draft pick in Colston Loveland, you'll have the German guy in Marlon Klein and Max Bredesen. I feel like the Wolverines always have a really good tight end, so this will definitely be an interesting spot to watch for them. On the defense, there's a couple of big names, with linebacker Ernest Hausman being one of the top linebackers in college football, Rod Moore and Derek Moore also getting a ton of hype, and then Rayshawn Benny, Jayshawn Barham, and Jair Hill are also getting a lot of 2026 NFL draft attention. Michigan always has a really stout defense, and overall, I think Michigan will be really solid. Bryce Underwood is extremely talented and could be one of the best freshman quarterbacks we've seen in a long time, but we're going to need to give him some time. The running back spot looks good, they have some depth at the receiver position, and overall, I think things will get better for Michigan in 2025. When we take a look at their schedule, they will play against New Mexico in Week 1, as they have a new first-year head coach, and this game should not be close. It'll be under the lights at the Big House, and the game will be over by the end of the first quarter. In Week 2, they play in the premier matchup of the weekend, as they will travel on the road to Oklahoma. The Sooners definitely reloaded, and Brent Venables absolutely needs to win this year to not get fired. John Mateer and Jaden Ott will be one of the best 1-2 punches in the SEC, and with this game being at home, I think Michigan loses. I already did my Oklahoma preview and picked the Sooners to win that one, and while I think it'll definitely be close, Michigan unfortunately gets their first loss of the year. In Week 3, they will then come back home and play against Central Michigan, as I feel like they always play one of these MAC schools, and honestly, they will beat down the Chippewas pretty quickly, 2-1. After that, in Week 4, they will play against the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Nebraska always gets a lot of hype, but this year people think the Huskers can take the next step. Dylan Raiola is back for year 2, and many think that Matt Rule will finally get over the hump, but I don't know. It's Nebraska. Despite this game being in Lincoln, I think Michigan wins in a close one, and they get to 3-1. After that, they will come back home and start out the month of November playing against the Wisconsin Badgers. They'll have a bye week to prepare for this, and I don't think Wisconsin is really all that good, so I think Michigan will win this game pretty easily in an old-fashioned Big Ten matchup. After that, they will travel over to the West Coast, as they will play against the USC Trojans. Last year's game was an absolute thriller, and Michigan won. I think Michigan's team is much better than USC's team this year, but with it being in California, it could definitely be intriguing. I think by this point in the year, Bryce Underwood will have found his stride, and I think Michigan goes into USC and wins that game. So, for the first half of the schedule, I have them going 5-1, with their only loss coming to Oklahoma. To go into the back half of their schedule, they first start out with a home game against Washington. This isn't the same Huskies team we saw 2 or 3 years ago with Michael Penix, but they have a really good new quarterback in Damon Williams Jr. Washington pulled off the upset last year, and Michigan definitely remembers that, and with this game being at home, I think Michigan wins by 2 touchdowns. After that, they travel on the road to play against their rival Michigan State, and Jonathan Smith is at a point where he needs to win this year. He needs to show the Spartans fan base that he can take the next step, and he's banking on Aiden Childs blowing up the quarterback spot. This sort of reminds me of the 2021 season when Michigan State came out of nowhere led by Kenneth Walker and pulled off an upset. But right now, there's just too much what if for me to pick that game, and while it could be a trap matchup for the Wolverines, I think Michigan wins and gets to their 7th win of the season. From there, they then come back home and play against Purdue, who in my opinion is the 2nd worst team in the Big Ten this year, so that game shouldn't be all that close and they should win pretty easily. And then they travel on the road to Northwestern. I don't think the Wildcats will be much better than the Boilermakers, as I have no idea what Coach Braun is doing, and they fell off in 2024. But to be fair, Northwestern does play really tough football, and they might be overlooking them. Still though, not going to pick it, as Michigan wins that game. After that, they travel on the road to Maryland, who I also don't think will be very good this year. Maryland never plays good football in the month of November, and they lost a lot of key players from last year's team, so I think Michigan wins this game pretty easily. Obviously, everybody has the Ohio State game circled, as Michigan has won 4 straight years against the Buckeyes. I know how bitter and fierce this rivalry matchup is, but don't hate me Michigan fans too much, but I think Ohio State wins. I just don't think there's any possible way that Ohio State loses this game 5 straight years, as I'm sure they've had this game circled since the moment they lost last season. Also, I think Ohio State is the better team on paper, and Michigan will end up falling for the 2nd time. This still might be good enough to get them to the Big Ten championship, depending on how Oregon and Penn State do, but either way, I think Michigan squeaks into the back end of the college football playoff here. I think 10-2 would be good enough to get them there, and they'd definitely be playing on the road in the first round, but that'd be a really good next step for Sharon Moore. I think Michigan checks a lot of boxes and should be favored in pretty much every game, but I think they slip up against Oklahoma and Ohio State. Who knows? Maybe Oklahoma doesn't take the next step this year and they win that game, and maybe they beat Ohio State for the 5th straight year and go undefeated. I think their schedule is pretty favorable, but that's my thoughts. 10-2 with a college football playoff berth. But what do you guys think? If you're a Michigan fan, what did I get right and wrong? What's a storyline or a player for this year's Michigan team I should know? And what team should I preview next? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you're going to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.